Hello and welcome to Pint Gaming. As always, I'm Gary. As the days get shorter and a frost gets to build in the air, there's nothing I want to do more than to play a good horror game. Today we're going to be talking about the Turbografx 16 classic Splatterhouse. Thanks for watching. For this journey into gaming's past, we're headed to April 1st, 1990. The #1 song in the US was Love Will Lead You Back by Long Island's own Taylor Dayne. And Back to the Future Part 3 saw one of the greatest film franchises of all time end with a whimper. Come on, you know it was awful. The storyline isn't really presented to you much in-game, but like in many cases, you had to read the instruction manual to learn what was going on in this title. We start like so many horror tales with our protagonist Rick and his girlfriend Jennifer seeking shelter from a storm in an abandoned mansion. This isn't just any mansion though. It's the former residence of Dr. West, who was a parapsychologist who mysteriously vanished years before the game began. As they enter the mansion, Jennifer screams, and Rick blacks out. Rick has apparently been killed, but is resurrected by the Terror Mask, an ancient Mayan sacrificial relic. Rick has been transformed into a hulking monster, and he wants his lady back. The gameplay consists of a left-to-right beat-em-up. There are 7 levels and multiple branching paths to discover. This game really lets you feel powerful, as monsters fall to pieces with each of your punches or jump kicks. The monster death animations are really satisfying, and Rick is a true badass. The difficulty starts out moderate, but by the end ramps up significantly. Scattered around the levels are multiple weapons. Hitting enemies with these items is so satisfying. This piece of wood, for example, is so much fun to baseball swing at flesh-eating monsters. Though this game is filled with blood and guts, it's interesting to note that Splatterhouse was still the victim of censorship in its Western release. As such, the Japanese version of Splatterhouse has some notable changes from the version that we got in the States. For one, the Terror Mask is white, just like the mask of Jason Voorhees that it so obviously was inspired by. The US version changed the color of the mask to red, to avoid any complications from Friday the 13th copyrights. The Japanese version also sports some satanic imagery that is changed in the US version. This boss battle, for example, is against an inverted cross in the Japanese version, but it's a disembodied head that you fight in the US version. These changes don't take anything away from the experience, and I actually like the head boss more from an aesthetic stance. Splatterhouse won't really wow you in terms of visuals today, but keep in mind that this game was released in 1990. For the time period, this was really nice. The sprites are large and detailed, and there isn't a hint of choppiness or slowdown. The backgrounds are also really detailed and clear. The Turbografx 16 was supposed to compete with the NES, and honestly, this looks better than the vast majority of NES titles. The visuals may be gross, but they're really well done. The boss battles are varied, and some are a real challenge. The first boss encounter sees our hero fighting against a room full of flesh-eating worms. It's easy enough, just hang out in the corner and punch and kick away. My favorite boss is this chainsaw-wielding madman. He's no pushover, and I find it kind of amusing that it sounds like he's using a dustbuster and not a chainsaw on the soundtrack. I died to this guy a bunch of times. As you get further into the game, you find out the ultimate fate of Jenny. As you enter the room, you find her surrounded by a group of undead creatures who hightail it out of there. Jenny stands up and screams for help, but turns into a grotesque creature. You fight her and are unable to save her. What a bummer. Looks like we have to keep on going to avenge our love. In the words of the immortal Forrest Gump,
so bye-bye, Jenny.
The final battle is kind of a disappointment, as the previous boss battles were a lot more challenging. A monster resembling a chin with googly eyes on it pops up from the ground. Avoid the giant hands and falling rocks, and congratulations, you have completed this retro classic. Splatterhouse isn't a long game, but what you get is engrossing and most of all fun. It's a game I love to revisit during the Halloween season. If you get a chance to experience this title, please give it a try, as it has more than earned the Pint Glass seal of approval. That wraps up this episode of Pint Glass Gaming. We hope you have a very happy and safe Halloween. If you like what you saw, please consider giving us a like and a subscribe. Also, please feel free to check out our other series, Pint Glass Travels. Our next episode is going to be coming at you from Paris and Colmar, France. We also have the Pint Glass Gaming podcast available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Anchor, and more. We thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.